Well, here we are. We're live on a Tuesday night, the 14th of July. Joe Chaffee here on the usually the Joe and Joe Weather Show. He hasn't popped in yet. I am waiting to get that thing that comes up where he says he's sitting in the cyber waiting room. And there he is. He's in. We're going to release him from the cyber waiting room. Our Joe Rayo, as he pops up on the screen. And here you are live, Mr. Rayo.
Attention business owners.
Can you solve that audio problem before you click on?
I can't, Joe. Yeah, I can't. But first of all, I got messed up here because YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook has suddenly decided to alter the look of my page.
They did that to me weeks ago, and I liked it. I liked the change, and it was there for about a day and a half, and then it was gone. It went back to the old way.
Tonight's a completely different configuration,
yes.
And it took me a while to find where Messenger was, so I could answer and get your Zoom link.
Well, you'll be happy to know. You'll be happy to know that I got a message from Facebook telling me that a video of mine was blocked because there was some music in it and it didn't belong to me. The thing is, it's not my video. I never posted this video, and right. It looks like some kind of news scene. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. So they're all messed up over there.
Oh, and my wife just told me we have a downpour.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is just in the last 20 minutes here out my window. It's gone completely overcast, and I wanted to clear out because I'm heading down to the beach at around 9:30, quarter of 10, because I want to see this the Comet Neowise. By the way, before we look at the comet, Joe, bring your head back into the shot. You're cutting off ever so slightly. There we go. So I have, because he said we could use it, and I always like to ask, not to just haphazardly put stuff up without the shooter's permission, but this was actually a near neighbor of mine, James Hannon, and he took this picture. This was on the 12th, the morning. This is the early morning shot. Coming out of the town of Terryville, which is literally a handful of miles west of me, and he got a nice little shot there of the comet. It's a wide view. I could try to bring it up make it a little bigger, but you see that little ball with the tail coming down there. It looked very impressive, and that was
in fact, the stars that you see to the upper right of the comet is the constellation of Auriga the Charioteer. In fact, the biggest star or the biggest spot there is the bright star Capella, known as the she-goat star, and that's a prominent constellation in the wintertime. Of course, it's summertime now, so to see a winter constellation, you have to get up at the crack of dawn. I do want to stress this, Joe, and to you and to a lot of the people out there who are going to try to see this in the coming days, these pictures can be deceptive. The comet is not as bright and as conspicuous as what you see in these photographs, these images. However, if you have a good pair of binoculars,
which I do, in fact, I've used it to spy on my neighbors for years.
If you have good binoculars, or especially a telescope with a wide field of view, what some would refer to as a rich field telescope with a wide angle eyepiece, through a telescope or a good pair of binoculars, this does look rather impressive. But to the naked eye, again, I want to stress, it doesn't look like what you see in the picture because it's a lot dimmer or ghostlier, as if I may use that term. The camera kind of picks up on a lot of the light of the comet better than your eyes do. But again, with an enlarged or a close-up view, then it really does look like a nice looking comet.
This would have been a great night for me to go up to Bald Hill to view this, because its elevation's up 440 feet, and you just get an absolute clear view of the North Shore and into Long Island Sound, but they put up street lights. So
Right.
you want to get into one of those natural light conditions, and I'm thinking about going down to the beach. There are some street lights there, but they're not they're not as many. So I'm hoping that we get into a spot where it's nice and dark and be able to see this. Of course, with these scattered thunderstorms that are coming down from the Hudson Valley, and again, I got the clouds that have rolled in here. They better get out of the way. I mean, they really should get out of the way.
Well,
We have plenty of time for them to disappear, but we shall see.
yeah.
So Timothy Veltman sent me, and I sent you the links to him. But being that you had that Facebook issue, you probably
Well, he sent me the same. He sent me the same
you
link,
did see it.
and I remember that derecho, Joe. In fact, I believe it happened here on a Friday night, Saturday morning, and I remember it only because at that time in 1995, I was the morning meteorologist on 1010 Winds Monday through Friday, and I got this frantic phone call on Saturday from the place where the forecast emanated from, up in Hopewell Junction, and they said we have a big problem. Tremendous thunderstorm came, knocked out power, and we can't do 1010 Winds, so you're going to have to do it. And of course I'm just like waking up. When you work, and I don't have to tell you this, Joe.
All
When
right.
you work 5 days a week and get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you cherish the Friday night, Saturday mornings where you don't have to get up at that hour. You can actually stay in bed. And the phone rang at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Hey, you got to go on because
I
we can't
know.
do it.
Well, I got the
The data
Albany
line.
radar shot here, and that was a really impressive derecho. And in fact, and I didn't realize this, but this was actually there were four derechos in that mid-July period because of the pattern that we had. That was actually the fourth one of the series that came out of Lake Huron, moved over Lake Ontario, crossed all of New York State, got down to the lower Hudson Valley, as you can see how it's outlined here on the graphic on the screen. But that was quite a 4 day a 4 day period from the 11th through the 15th. You had four derechos in four different locations from the northern plains into the northeast.
And now that we're going to be going into probably beginning Friday. Well, Friday actually is the day of transition. Friday is the day when we'll be transitioning from what basically today and for the next couple of days will be relatively comfortable air to just full all-out heat wave starting Saturday, and probably, Joe, from I looked at the European ensemble before we went on. It looks to me like we're going to be seeing a number of these days all the way out through the end of next week where we could be hitting or exceeding 90 on a regular basis. And if we get any of those showers and storms developing along the periphery of the dome of heat, we could be seeing derecho city again.
Well, we'll see. I even I brought up the surface map. At least I thought I did. What did I do with it? Here it is. Yeah. So this was the surface map back. I've got it here for July 13th, 1995, and you have an offshore high built all the way back into the southern plains. You can see the frontal boundary that lied right across northern Minnesota, across the northern lakes, and that really just kind of held its place, just moving it along and just run out. I'll jump a day ahead. So this is going into Friday, the 14th. I mean, you still pretty much had hot, humid air covering all of the eastern part of the United States, and even going into the 15th and the 16th. Now, you did get a little bit of a frontal boundary with a backdoor front that came down that at least brought a bit of a break, but it was under these circumstances that we wound up getting that fourth derecho that was shown. And I also went and pulled up the upper air, and you'll notice, we've been talking about the upper air with respect to this sort of flat east-west high. And when I say flat, it literally looks that way. It just lines up east-west. It doesn't have a big northward push. But if you look at this ridge here, going back to that 1995 period, you had a very, very strong upper high that's centered where that big orange dot is that you see over Nebraska, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and that's kind of pushed up into Minnesota and into the lakes. So that's a bit of a difference. And how these highs are oriented makes a big difference in terms of who sees what with regards to heat. And I'm just going to roll this along for a couple of days forward, going to the 13th and the 14th. And you'll notice that the upper high gradually migrates to the east. And that, of course, brought the hot air into the east and set up that entire derecho situation. And here on this, and by the way, the links, I put the links of this on the chat board so you can take a look. This really breaks down what happened in New York State. 92-mile-an-hour wind gust in Otis, Massachusetts, as an example. One fatality reported in the Berkshires. So you have storm reports here throughout western New England and through upstate New York. Roofs torn off, truck blown over on Route 87. 75-mile-an-hour wind gusts. This was very, very impressive. And we've got two radar views here from upstate New York, and you see the extent of the line of storms and also how active it was that day with all sorts of boxes that were up with regards to severe weather. So you could, if you guys can look at this stuff on your own. This is a pretty good website, slapointewx.com. SLAPOINTEWX.com. It's from WRGB up in Albany, and they've got this, the whole a whole section in there with all sorts of historical data. The other site is actually from SPC. If you go into SPC's website, they have a whole section in there on derechos and case pages there, and there's profiles of 1995 derecho, all four of them. This was the one that was called the right turn derecho, Joe. It went from North Dakota across Minnesota and then turned sharply right and dropped southward through Michigan and into Ohio. Then there was the Ontario Adirondack derecho. That was the one that we got. And there's a view here of the Albany radar. I'm noticing at the top of that line, there must have been some kind of funnel in there because you can see the radar echo, that hook in there. You see it's a clear hook echo showing up on the radar. You don't see that too often.
Yeah, and then you look for these bow or bow wave type structure to these thunderstorm lines. Yeah, that's that. Look at that thing, just
yeah, that was
literally dropping right into
that's very
right
very
into the
very
upper
impressive.
Hudson Valley. Woo.
Well, we've got nothing like that now. So, amen. The radar at the moment. See if we can pick out Mr. Rayo's thunderstorm. Moving southeast, should be getting close to me, moving into southwest Connecticut. Bill Uber, I think the boilerplate may still be on, so let's hope so. But there are some scattered showers and storms in New England today because of the upper trough that's up there, the little low. You actually can see the rotation going on in Maine and into Massachusetts. But much of the eastern seaboard in terms of thunderstorm activity today is quiet. Picks up a little bit over Florida, and a minimal amount of thunderstorm activity going on in the Gulf states, Joe, because that is the one part of the U.S. where we are seeing heat wave conditions, excessive heat advisories and excessive heat warnings up for Texas into Louisiana and also into the southwestern part of the United States. And again, that reflects that east-west orientation of that upper high.
Is that it? What would you call that? The southern plains or the southeast or?
The southern plains, the central Gulf states, the southern plains back to the southwest. How's that?
Right, right. And I'm just looking at the animation from Go 16. And yeah, well, our friend yesterday, Addison Green, talking about the extreme heat and humidity. And, he's not used to it yet, but if he's there for more than another year or two, I guess he will get accustomed to all of this. It's going to be a part of your daily life from about, I guess, the beginning of May until the end of September, early October.
Yeah, I'll say. I can remember those days.
Yeah.
Satellite tonight. There are some possible severe weather issues going on up in the northern plains. And let me jump back to the radar. We can take a look. There's a line of storms right now going across Wisconsin, down into southeast Minnesota and through parts of Iowa. And I believe SPC's got a couple of working watch boxes up there. Let me just bring it up. Yes, indeed, they have actually a rather large severe thunderstorm watch posted for parts of most of Iowa into Wisconsin, and there's another watch box in central and east central and southeastern Colorado into the Oklahoma Panhandle. So that's where your risks are today. Both slight risks, little marginal risk there in southeastern New England. And that makes sense given what we're seeing on the radar, and also small area of marginal risk in parts of Mississippi. But where the heat is, Joe, in Texas, there's actually zero chance of thunderstorms in that zone, and that's again because of the sinking air with the upper high.
That's where I'm sure they wouldn't mind seeing a couple of torrential downpours, but it doesn't look like it's going to be happening, at least not today.
Not today. So I brought up the GFS upper air starting back from last Saturday when Faye was moving up into Canada, and we had a trough swinging through the east over the weekend and on Monday. Now, of course, that's pulling out, and you see this east-west high, folks, right here. There it is, right in there, and it extends from the central Atlantic west across the southern states. But again, as I said, it's flat. It doesn't. The top of that ridge, okay, has westerly winds to it, and it's not bulged up toward the Canadian border. It's not bulged up the east coast. It's just basically a flat east-west high that is covering the southern half of the United States. So in here, the heat builds, and the question is, how we're going to be on the edge of this. How much of the edge, I don't know, but there might be times where the high pushes up a bit further to the north, and then we get into those 90-degree days. But you still have this rather busy flow across southern Canada, and we got to we just have to watch that flow. If there's any kind of little short wave that comes along, it might be enough to just flatten the ridge ever so slightly, which it actually shows it doing along about Monday for a short time. And then it
Actually,
kind of,
Joe, if you think about it, we've been talking about the possibility, and even the folks over at CDC, Climate Prediction Center, they've been talking about it too, about a possible prolonged period of extreme heat, which really has not happened yet. And why? Because when they're looking out beyond, let's say, 5 or 6 days, as you just pointed out, that busy upper jet stream has had its way with the ridge from, inflating and putting us in prolonged heat. And so while we say now, or while I would say now with I hate to use the term guarded optimism because I don't like heat and
no,
humidity,
neither
but
do I.
with guarded optimism, if you're into that sort of thing, I think that Friday, the day of transition with showers and storms, and then Saturday, Sunday, and maybe through a good part of next week, we may be dealing with at or above 90-degree temperatures and moderate to high levels of humidity. But again, beyond 5 days, who's to say? Maybe that busy, as you call it, Joe, upper air pattern to the north will come on down and kind of flatten that ridge out and give us a couple of days of maybe some less humid and not quite so hot weather as we're in the midst of right now.
Well, that jet, by the way, it's like a ruler across the Pacific through the Gulf of Alaska. Normally in the wintertime, we look at that ruler jet stream going much further south, but there's almost a straight line flow across the Pacific into the Canadian Northwest, and then you've got then it comes out on the Atlantic side as well. You've got these little short waves along the way, and I'm just looking at this, this latest 18Z GFS run tries to bring down one of these short waves, and it doesn't really go. We're not talking about something that digs all the way down into the southeast, but there's enough of it here that you have to wonder whether there might be some kind of cold front that comes through, and maybe just as it's about to get really hot, it gets cut off because the ridge flattens. Now, here we go later next week on this particular run. There is a short wave that flattens, actually splits the ridge. The Atlantic part of it is out to the east, of course, but then the The part that's in the southern plains moves out into the west over Colorado and Utah. So you got the space in the middle. So that's the one caveat here. As you said, we've seen the models for the last number of weeks trying to go this route of showing, rather strong upper high or strong enough upper high to bring heat up here for at least several days. But we keep seeing these short waves appear in the northerly in the flow, and we have to allow for the possibility that we yeah, it'll get hot for a day or two, and then maybe we'll get a cold front and catch a break. At least that's
Right,
what this GFS run is showing.
right. And I noticed on the hand-drawn prog out to out to 7 days, they have these little troughs that are embedded in that ridge of high pressure. So who's to say? If you take right now, though, if you take some of the models at face value, we might be looking at again a stretch of more than 3 days of 90-degree weather beginning Saturday, and the transition day looks to be Friday with the threat of showers and scattered thunderstorms.
So I'm bringing up I got the 2 meter temperatures across the United States. So let's just set this up here. We'll go to, now we're starting with tomorrow. We'll look at 18Z. These are not exactly the high temperatures, but you see in the purple where the 90-degree plus readings are, and even some 100-degree readings when you get down into Texas, and of course in the Southwest, which is not exactly breaking news. And there it is on Thursday. Actually, Thursday winds up that the 90s push gets suppressed a little bit to the south in the east. I thought it would be maybe because we might have a few more clouds around on Thursday, though I think we'll have some sun, and there might be more of an ocean wind, or at least a component of an ocean wind in there. But then we go to Saturday, and you got 90s on the GFS pushing up into southern New England, and the hundreds pushing up into the Dakotas. Sunday, still some temperatures, up near or over 90 along the East Coast, hundreds in Kansas and Oklahoma. Monday, still seeing a little bit of 90 there along the coastal plain. Same for Tuesday, same for Wednesday, same for Thursday, and on the edge for Friday. So it's a matter of, is there going to be a short wave in the north that comes along and cuts it off a little bit? We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
After 5 days, what are we talking about? 5+ days. So we're talking about, 5 days from now on maybe Sunday of this weekend or Monday of next week, we might have a whole different perspective on things as to what will be happening. But right now,
We
it
reserve
looks
the
like
right to
next week.
change our minds.
Yeah, it looks like next week, from this standpoint, looks to be hot. We'll see if that holds true.
Not a ton of rain, by the way, if WPC is correct. We are generally under a quarter of an inch. You've got some 1 inch plus amounts in central and western PA, upstate New York, and then it picks up quite a bit across the Great Lakes, which makes sense if they're at where the top of where the short waves are actually having some impact. They're going to see the showers and thunderstorms there. Some heavy rains on the west and southwest part of Florida, on the order of several inches there. The west is dry. Texas is dry. Oklahoma into Arkansas, western Louisiana dry. A little bit of action in the Gulf states. None of this even remotely suggests anything of a tropical nature, because that looks like it's going to be quiet for a while. So I guess, Joe, the next question is, as far as thunderstorms are concerned, what, late Thursday afternoon, some pop-ups inland, and then on Friday, when we've got this little weak frontal boundary going by, that there might be a shower or thunderstorm with that. But otherwise, I really don't see very much happening here. Maybe another chance on Monday with another front, and later next week. But there's just not really, there really isn't going to be much in the way of shower or storm activity over the next 7 to 10 days while we have this big east-west big upper high.
Hit and miss. That's what it looks like from here in terms of, nothing that's going to be particularly organized. As you said, Joe, maybe early next week, we might get some late day boomers popping up on Monday and Tuesday. But, this is the time of the year now. And if I recall correctly, it was a year ago this weekend that we had our hottest weather of the summer in 2019. It looks like 2020 is going to be just about the same.
Hmm. Well, we are back full screen because we're out of weather.
Yeah.
Um, a gentle reminder to everyone that tomorrow is tax day.
Tomorrow's why? Oh, yes, that's right.
Tomorrow's tax
That's
day. Now,
right.
I filed back in early March, but I had to do my daughter, my youngest daughter. I had to prepare her Pennsylvania state tax return. Okay, and she owes money, Joe.
Okay.
She owes money. Do you know how much she owes?
Um, $7.35.
No, even better. 1 cent.
1 cent?
1 cent. So 1 cent. And I'm thinking, okay, now how do I do this? Do I just take a piece of Scotch tape and attach a penny to the return? Because I actually did the return by hand, which I haven't done. I've never done a return by hand. Always used a TurboTax, but so I'm thinking, why don't I just Scotch tape a penny? So I just sent it. I rounded it down to zero, and it just basically made it zero. The way it usually works with the tax offices, there's a tolerance. If it's under a certain amount of money, if it's like less than $1 or $10 or whatever it is, they don't bother with it because it costs them more to go after it than they're gonna get. So they're gonna have to just hold on to that 1 cent and send me a bill if that's the case.
How much interest is on that 1 cent?
Well, well, penalties and interest. It'll be $1 million by the time she's my age.
Wasn't there a Flintstones episode where they go forward in time? Just before they go forward in time, Mr. Slade loans Fred something like $5, and when they go ahead like a million years, they look back on the records, they find that $5, based upon the interest, that Fred now owes something like $14 million.
Oh, Jesus. Did What was the name of the company? Was it Slate Construction or
Slate Construct, although early in the series when they were
wasn't it the Granite something?
Rockhead, I think, actually, and it had nothing to do with Joe Rockhead.
Right.
I think, and they've also had a number of different addresses like 13 Stony Way and 266 Gravel Point Boulevard or whatever.
Oh, good Lord, the world we live in. Oh, let's see. All right. So I got a Johnny Quest question. So he says this may be a strange question, but how do dry thunderstorms form? If there's enough moisture for a storm to form, what keeps the rain from hitting the ground? Well, for one thing, these storms are usually in the deserts, where you get enough to develop the clouds, the cumulus clouds, and the thunderhead. But it's just so bone dry. You're talking about places where dew points are ridiculously low. You got rain falling into air where the relative humidity is like 2 to 3%. It has to evaporate before it reaches the ground.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm looking for my Briller Jeopardy question
I know
here.
that sounds a little strange, odd when you think about the fact that there are thunderstorms, but that's what happens out in the in parts of the West where it is so bone dry and it gets really really hot, and you get these thunderstorms to form, and you get all sorts of lightning, but you get very little rain out of it because there's just nothing there. You've used it all up essentially.
You've exhausted the supply.
Correct. As I just exhausted my supply of wine. All right, hang in there. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find mine too.
I found mine, so
So you go ahead.
all right. Question numero uno. Who is the only music artist to have a #1 album in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s? A #1 album.
A #1 album.
To
I'm
have a
gonna.
#1 album in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s.
Okay. Is it a person?
Yes.
Is it a male person?
No.
Not a male person. So it's a female person. Oh, God. Number one album in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, and 2010. Oh, God. I don't know. Music is not my thing.
I would have thought just off the top of my head, I would have said Cher, but it's not. It's, believe it or not, Barbara Streisand.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. Not a huge fan, but yeah, that makes sense. What
Number
else?
question 2 is, who was the first president to name a woman to his cabinet?
Who was the first president to name a woman to his cabinet?
Right.
I'm going to say Gerald Ford.
Oh, you're way off on that.
Okay.
It was a Democrat, and we're talking about the 1930s probably. So that would be
Franklin Roosevelt.
Franklin Roosevelt.
Okay.
And the third and final question, what two planets do not have any moons?
Okay. Well, Mercury.
Mercury is one.
Uh, well, Pluto's not a planet anymore.
Right.
I know Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. Get those out of the way. Which leaves Mars and Venus. I guess this is my one of two choices.
Right.
So I'll say Mars.
Nope, it was
It's
Venus.
Venus. Okay. Well, it's process of the of elimination.
Actually, Mars does have two tiny moons, Deimos and Phobos, which means terror and fear.
Oh, okay.
Which is what 2020 has been chock filled
so far.
So far.
So far.
Yeah.
Okay, so yours. Are you ready? I think we've seen this one before. What state is the only state that whose name ends with 3 consecutive vowels?
We haven't done this one before.
Okay.
Consecutive vowels?
3 consecutive vowels.
A-E-I-O-U. That should be it. No. See, I'm going now down the list of states.
No, I did the same thing.
Wait a minute. No, that's not it either. I thought I had a California, but that's I and A, but they
right.
No.
When I tell you, you're gonna be mad because it's obvious. Hawaii.
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 Yeah.
3 consecutive vowels.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
All right.
So how many Earths could fit inside the sun?
I think it's like 1,300,000.
1.3 million. Okay. Question 3. Where was the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence stored during World War II?
Oh. You mean they actually moved it from Philadelphia?
I think they did. Yeah,
that's amazing.
To keep it safe.
Why did they think during World War II somebody was going to come and bomb Philadelphia?
Well, there were German subs and ships that were bombed out offshore, and not that far offshore either. Actually, Joe, in Throg's Neck, in Throg's Neck, in Country Club by the marina.
Marina Del Rey.
No. Not the marina, not the catering hall marina, but the boat marina off Ampere Avenue.
Is that where Fort Schuyler is?
No. Near Pelham Bay Park.
Okay.
Okay. There's an area in there. There's actually part of what was a small German submarine that they washed ashore in the late 1940s, and it has been there ever since. I don't know if it's still there, but it was there when we were kids.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, where did they store the stuff?
Well, I would say as far away from the coast, because in in 1941 they moved the Rose Bowl from Pasadena to North Carolina, right after a couple of weeks after Pearl Harbor. Um, I don't know. I'll say Denver, Colorado.
Fort
I
Knox.
Fort Knox, where all the
Fort
gold
Knox. Well, the
is.
gold is there, so they figured, you know what, move the gold over a little, make a little spot for the deck and the Constitution, and everybody's happy. And those questions, courtesy, of course, from the chairman, Scott Briller, who I don't know if he's on tonight. I haven't seen him on the board, but if he's not there, we wish you well, Scott. And I'm trying.
Chuck Cardillo on the chat board said that they brought the Declaration of Independence to Trump Tower.
Oh Jesus. Oh boy. Well, let's not go down that particular road. So
Latex Dreams said it was maybe no. David Schwartz said Fort Dix.
well, we already have a radar at Fort Dix.
Yeah.
We could get into so much trouble. Do we really want to do this?
No, we don't. We don't.
All right. So 7:38. I think that wraps it up for tonight. We're in quiet mode, and it's kind of dark out there. So the storm better get out of the way because I want to see this darn comet. And I got my binoculars. They're here somewhere. I'm gonna find them. They're in one of the boxes. So I'm gonna bring
I have binoculars. I have two kinds. I have 7 by 35,
Mhm.
which is standard, the kind you bring to a baseball game, for example. And I have 25 by 100s. And in order for me, I have to mount these on a tripod with an 8 pound counterweight. That's how
Wow.
heavy these things are. I
Wow.
mean, these are like military binoculars. So I'm looking forward to trying to see this thing through those this evening. But last night looked in the northwest. What did I have? One gigantic big blob of cumulus,
Oh.
and it could very well happen again tonight.
Well, you start to see it around 9:30, but it should be is it visible for the whole night or just for a short time?
No, it'll be around. See, the problem right now is at about 9:30 when it gets reasonably dark. It's only going to be about 10 degrees above the horizon.
And then it
Again,
disappears.
it sets after that.
Right.
But then it comes back up again around 3:30 in the morning. If you care to get up at 3:30, Joe, there you go.
No, that I'm not doing. But I'm just not doing it. But as the days go by,
It'll get higher in
higher
the
and higher,
north.
so it'll last longer and longer.
Right. And it's getting closer to the Earth. In fact, it'll be closest, I think, a week from now, next Tuesday. And then after that, it'll be moving both away from us and the sun, and it'll shrink and get very dim very rapidly. So we have another week, and
All right.
we have another week of probably having afternoon and evening clouds building up in front of us. So that's the way it goes sometimes.
And that's
We'll
how
see.
that sometimes your luck is your luck, and there's
I
nothing you
did
can do about it.
the place I went to look for it last night. There's a ball field across the way from where I live, and I went there last night. A consolation prize. This was amazing. Trees that were behind me, like as a backdrop, twinkling. I mean, I never saw so many fireflies in the
Oh
trees.
yeah.
It was spectacular. It was almost as if it was Christmas time, and I was looking at Christmas trees with the blinking lights on.
If you get an opportunity, if you get the BBC on your on cable on Saturdays, check. It's on all day. That's all they run all day, and Saturday night into Sunday morning. They run David Attenborough's Planet Earth, and they have all these different episodes. And they've done several episodes focusing on marine life and bioluminescence, uh, and also with the fireflies and everything else. There are some we only see what we see here, but you go to some parts of go out west where the light shows that are put on by certain index with bioluminescence is something to behold. And
Right.
they even showed termite mounds that basically light up like Christmas trees. So it was just, and then of course there's the marine life that, especially in the deep water, we're talking about thousands of meters down, where there's no sunlight at all, and how these fish that look really, like you're in the twilight zone. Some of these fish are really bizarre. and the light that their own bodies produce and how they use that to either evade predators or to pounce on prey. It's very fascinating stuff.
So that was like a little consolation prize last night. And if the same happens tonight, I don't see the comet because of clouds. At least I can stare and look at the fireflies for a few minutes.
And why not? All right, everybody, have a great night. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow, 7 o'clock Eastern time, right here. And don't forget, you can also listen to us on podcasts on Anchor, on Spotify, and on Google Podcasts, and a few other places. And hopefully, any day now, we'll be on Apple Podcasts. So this way, you don't have to. If you don't have time to watch the video, you could just plug in your earbuds and listen